So you want to make your own watch? I would say you're kind of weird, but aren't we all? I have been building watches for a while now, so I decided to create this video on how to assemble watches yourself. Feel free to skip around if you need something specific, otherwise enjoy the video. Throughout this video I'll be going through the different parts required to build a watch and then assembling one myself as a demonstration. When you're ready to select your parts, you'll have many different places to choose from. The most popular places are like Namoki, Seiko Mod / Crystal Times, DLW Watches, Watch and Style, Lucius Alter, and then finally AliExpress / eBay. In the description is a document with pretty much all of the possible websites you could buy watch parts from, but if you have any questions about where to buy from or just general ones, feel free to ask me or do some research into different watch forums and subreddits such as like r/Seiko Mods or watchmaking. The first thing I usually choose when building a watch is the movement. The movement is like the main engine of the watch and powers all the different functions and complications. There are many different options, but the most popular for these kinds are the Seiko NH series, the Miota 8000 / 9000 calibers, the ETA movement, and then also the random Chinese knockoffs like the ST and DG calibers. If you're a beginner, I would highly recommend buying something like an NH35, or actually really any of the Seiko NH series since the parts of them are interchangeable except for the NE15s. I say this because the NH35 is quite a reliable movement with a large community based around it, and on top of that is very cheap. If you need to look more specifically into different specs, I would recommend Caliper Corner. Then if it doesn't list something there, usually the specification sheets are available online, you just have to search them up. The movement's price will heavily depend on what you're looking for. I usually spend somewhere from $20 to $200 in these kinds of projects, but it really depends on your situation. So, for this project I'll be using the Seiko NH35 since it's what I'm most familiar with and has the best price to performance ratio for these workhouse movements. To be entirely honest, the movement itself is actually quite ugly. Although it does make up for these things with its 41-hour power reserve, bidirectional winding, 20 to 40 seconds of accuracy per day, and best of all, only $25 on AliExpress. The prices of the NH35s will differ depending on where you buy them from. The lowest I've seen is like $17 and the highest like $60 or $70 if you want like a modded one. I've used this movement quite a lot in the past, and the main reason I like it is due to it, being the most popular movement within the watchmaking / modding community. You don't have to follow suit, but it's my go-to for these kinds of projects. Second up is the dial. The dial is kind of the face of the watch and usually has markers so that you can read the time. There's a bunch of different styles depending on the kind of watch you're aiming for, including the standard Rolex dive watch clone or a more dress watch look, and then this sort of like military / field watch theme. There's a ton of places you can buy your dials from, but if you're struggling, just search up NH35 dial or whatever movement you're using to get the correct measurements for it. The dial can run somewhere from $10 to $100, it just really depends on the quality and who you're buying it from. Stuff like a meteorite dial will be more expensive than like the Submariner clone off AliExpress. I just implore that if you do choose to buy from AliExpress or eBay, that it's a vetted, reputable seller. And sometimes the lume on those dials tends to be quite bad, so just keep that in mind. Since I wanted an Aquaterra dial with my friend's name on it, I asked the dude on eBay that had made a custom dial for me in the past to do this, but he said he didn't do customs for some reason, even though I had literally commissioned him months before. So the next best thing was asking an AliExpress seller. He didn't speak English though, so I had some difficulty explaining to him what I wanted and had to ask him to modify it a couple times, but surprisingly he tolerated my numerous revisions and apparently was like up at like 2 AM or something, like doing customer support. Props to him. In the end though, the only thing that mattered was that I had my friend's name printed on the 33mm Aquaterra dial successfully. After that, you're going to want to choose the hands. The hands are the things that the movement actually spins to keep track of time. Choosing them is very similar to the dial. If you just search up the name of the movement followed by hands, such as like gold NH35 hands, you should get a plethora of results. Other than that, just make sure it lines up with the general theme of your watch so it doesn't look out of place and distract from the design. The prices of hands can vary a lot. The absolute lowest I've seen is something like $3 on AliExpress and like $50 for a nicer set. Again, watch out for the AliExpress hands. The lume on them tends to be quite bad, but otherwise they're fine. The Aquaterra uses these dive watch arrow hands, so I bought a set from WR Accessories for like $20 with a coupon code. A little on the pricey side, but I guess it's fine since the lume is leagues better than anything on AliExpress. Next is the case. It houses the movement and all of the parts inside of your watch and takes most of the wear and tear of regular life. However, before selecting your case, you're going to want to consider if you need a separate watch crown, crystal, chapter ring, or bezel respectively. Usually these things are included in the case, but if they're not or you want a custom one, I can help you choose. If you didn't know, the crystal is kind of like the glass-like material that protects the dial. There are many different styles. You can have it like domed or tinted a different color, but I typically just like a flat sapphire with no modifications. In my opinion, it's just kind of the cleanest look and doesn't distort the dial at all. So you also need to check the diameter and height just to see if it fits your case and how you want it installed. For example, if you want it pressure fitted or just secured with glue. Then if you want like a custom crown, I would recommend looking up something like NH35 steel crown, and you should get like plenty of results. And then if you want to put a chapter ring into your case, I mean, it's pretty much purely for aesthetic purposes, so just check the length and make sure it fits your case. And then also, if your case doesn't come with a bezel or you just want to switch it out, there are plenty of different bezels and inserts for tons of different watches. There are custom case backs, but like 99% of the time I would just use the one that comes with the case unless you want to design a custom one or the case doesn't come with it for some reason. If you do though, you'll need a gasket. It's like a circular rubber thing that seals the case and case back together to prevent anything from getting inside. If you don't have one, your watch will kind of just die with any contact to moisture. I mean, usually the only thing I decide when building a watch is whether I want a clear case back or not. Just so you can see the movement. But if you want something like specific text, you're gonna have to look into different printing services or just do it yourself. I find that the case itself is usually one of the most expensive parts of the build, excluding the movement of course. It's usually like something from $30 to $200 in most cases. There are different design elements you need to consider when choosing, like whether you want the finishing to be brushed or polished, and if it just overall matches your watch's theme. The final thing is that if you're into swimming or just coming into contact with water regularly, you may want to know how waterproof your watch is. A lot of different sellers just straight up lie about how tolerant it is to water, especially on places like AliExpress. If you're really concerned about that, I would try using a water pressure testing machine. I never do though, and just assume it has no tolerances against water, and nothing's broken so far. For my watch, I chose this Aqua Terra case from AliExpress. It has a sapphire crystal, crown, and solid case back. No bezel insert or chapter ring since that's just kind of the style of the Aqua Terra, but it's fine, you know. I don't really have anything else to say here other than I kind of do like the chamfer on these lugs here. I think I'm going to steal that for a project of mine later. After that is a strap or bracelet. It's kind of like the little circular bit that sits on your wrist and then actually keeps your watch in place. If you didn't know, the term watch strap actually refers to the leather, nylon, or rubber styles that they make them in, and then the term bracelet is simply referring to the metal styles. While the absolute bare minimum for a strap is like $10, they get decently expensive on the higher end. I would say like hundreds for stuff that isn't luxury but still high quality. I prefer to buy my leather and rubber straps from Burden or Etsy, and then places like Uncle Seiko or Strap Code for my metal bracelets. I mean, or you can just use eBay, but it's like 50-50 on the quality there. It's a bit dicey. Keep in mind that sometimes on AliExpress they'll sell a bracelet alongside the case, which I personally tend to stray away from since they're usually hollow and they don't have the best quality. Even if it's from somewhere like Namoki, I usually just buy everything separately since even though the quality is pretty nice, I just prefer the flexibility of choosing my own thing. There are a ton of different styles for straps and bracelets. For example, if you want a decent metal bracelet, an imitation of like Rolex's Oyster, Presidential, or Jubilee bracelets can work pretty well. Or if you want a more formal watch, some variation of leather can suit you quite nicely. If you're going for a field or military watch, I would recommend some kind of NATO or rubber strap. Spec-wise, the only thing you'll really need to worry about is like the spring bar length. If you didn't know, the strap is connected to the watch case by these bars with springs in them that fit into the lugs of the watch case. The standard is like 20 millimeters long for most watches, but there are different variations. So when you're buying your bracelet, you should always check the spring bar size. For my watch, I just chose this black leather thing off Etsy. Although Omega does sell Aqua Terras with metal bracelets, I don't think they look very good. I feel like the dial is much more suited to a dress watch in my opinion, so a metal bracelet just kind of looks unnatural on it. The quality of the leather strap I bought is actually quite nice. It was apparently handcrafted in Vietnam. Other than that, I don't have much to say. Just try to choose something that's comfortable if it's going to be on your wrist all day. When you make a watch, you'll need some very specialized tools, so here's what I would recommend in no particular order. First is a nice set of tweezers and calipers if you don't have them already. I would get a pair of brass plated tweezers and longer digital calipers if you don't already have them, but otherwise don't bother buying new ones. I estimate it'll cost something like $5 or more for the tweezers and then like $25-ish for the calipers. Second is a loupe or something that can magnify like the thing I have here. Something to magnify will help especially when you're trying to place the hands onto the movement pinions, since it's a pain to do with the naked eye, trust me on this one. For the cheaper ones it'll be something like $10. Third is some Rodico. It's similar to clay in texture but allows you to pick up items and remove dust from things without leaving any residue. It's extremely useful and I regret not having some when I started since it's only like $10. Fourth is a movement holder and cushion. I have a 3D printer, so sometimes I just print out like a movement holder out of plastic. But if you don't have one, plenty of things online will work. It'll be like $10 or $30 for the holder and then like $10 for the cushion. Fifth is like a small set of screwdrivers to change out bracelets and occasionally movement holders inside of the watch case. The screwdriver's price really depends on the quality of them. I'd estimate like $10 if you want a cheap set, but like far more if you want like an iFixit collection. 6 are the hand setters and removers, which help you install and uninstall the hands from the movement. There are different styles for each tool respectively, however I would say for the setters just buy the regular hand tool instead of the press machine since it's less finicky to set up, and then just buy the regular hand removers instead of whatever this thing is since again it's less janky to get working. I got mine for like $10 for the setters and removers each respectively, so it's not that expensive. 7th is a nicer Springbar tool that'll help you remove the spring bar and strap from the case. Please don't be like me and cheap out on the Springbar tool, especially if you're going to be working in metal bracelets. You don't have to buy the $200 Virgin one, but you can do what I did and just buy the nicer tips from Essenger and then put them onto like a regular Amazon tool. It works really well surprisingly, and it's only like $40 in comparison. Also remember to buy nice spring bars to avoid the headache of them crapping out on you. 8th is a set of diamond files. I'll explain this when I assemble the watch, but the set that comes with the movement is too large for the case, so you have to manually cut it down so that the crown fits into the case. To do this, I would recommend a clipper tool like this, and then a set of diamond files to precisely remove the rest of the stem. I do warn you that the stem is steel, so cutting it is very difficult if you're using something like a pair of scissors. Diamond files are quite cheap though, like $15 or more, and the clipper should be like $20ish depending on what you choose. Then 9th is optional. You can buy this Namoki Tool Kit with pretty much all the tools I mentioned for only $35. This actually kind of surprised me considering how cheap it is for how high quality it is. So if you don't own any of these tools, the kit is a good place to start. Otherwise, I would just like buy them individually if you already have some. Finally, if you're going to install a custom crystal into your case, you'll need like a crystal press or glue if you don't want to pressure fit it. The only thing I can say here is try to get a nicer one for like $50 or $75 since I hear the cheaper ones can be kind of terrible. And now finally we can start the assembly of the watch. To begin, you'll want to start by putting on your gloves and then also getting out your movement and movement holder. After you've gotten that set up, you'll want to take out your dial. On the bottom side of the dial should be these 2 or more dial feet that will connect directly into the movement. You'll just want to try to slide the dial into the correct position, being mindful not to be too forceful when you're doing it. After you made sure the dial is flush with the movement, I usually just like to use some Rodico and take the little specks of dust off. Next is setting the hand. It's probably the most annoying part of doing this entire thing, but you know, it is what it is. I personally like to use the hand setting machine instead of the little hand tool since it automatically aligns it for you, but it's based mostly on preference, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, so the hands, minutes, and seconds hands will all have different pinion sizes, so you'll have to use different tip sizes regardless of what kind of tool you're using. Here you can see me switching the tips out. In the center of the movement is called the movement pinion. That's where you're going to be attaching your hands. It's essentially like a cylinder, and then on the hands will be a little cylinder ring that you attach it onto. For the hour and minute hands, pretty much what you want to do is just line it up onto the pinion as best as you can before you start anything. Once you have properly lined up everything, you want to slowly and gently push down on whatever tool you're using until you hear a click coming from the hand. This will probably take a couple of tries, so just be patient, keep on going, try to be gentle when you're doing it so that you don't break anything. Before you move on, you'll want to check that everything's working and functioning. To do this, you can check by setting the time. You want to pull out the crown by 2 clicks. 1 click will set the date, 2 clicks will set the hours and minutes. So just kind of move it around and see if everything's functioning. After you've set the hour hand, make sure that it's set to 12 AM instead of 12 PM, or else there'll be some funkiness when you're setting the date. Once you've done that, you're going to want to set the minute hand as well. It's pretty much similar to the hour hand, but just kind of harder since it's a bit smaller than the hour hand. The minute hand should be straight, pretty much one-on-one with the hour hand so that there's no inaccuracies when you're setting the time. After that, you're going to want to set the seconds hand. It's pretty much the hardest part of this entire build. The way I like to do it is I pick it up with some Rodico and then I carefully align it under the little tiny pinion that it has on the movement and then slowly and gently push down on it. There is a microscopic little bar or little cylinder that you need to rest the second barrel onto, which is really difficult, and it took me almost 80 tries to get down, but it can be done with practice, so be patient. After all the hands are placed, you're going to then want to take out the crown stem. There's a small lever mechanism on the NH35 that you need to push down while simultaneously pulling out on the crown to take out the stem. If the stem is pulled out into setting the time, that mode, the lever will not appear, so you have to make sure to push it all the way down before you actually take this out. My movement holder is not actually securing the movement down, so I do this with one hand, which is kind of difficult, but After that is the main case. You'll want to start by unscrewing the back case. You want to make sure that the dial and the inside of the case are completely clear from dust or any particles, or else that'll be pretty much in there forever. Then you want to install the movement holder. Sometimes the cases don't include them, sometimes they do. Mine's a bit of a larger case, so it does have one. It'll just kind of slide in there with some force. After that, you're going to want to put the case over the dial movement, and then, pretty much turn it over, and you can put the case back on. The final part of this will be installing the crown stem. Out of the box, it's too large, so you're going to have to do what I told you previously and cut down parts of the threading so that it'll actually fit. To do this, you're going to want to take it out of the case by pushing down the lever again. Then you want to take the clippers I told you to get, and then clip down the threading over here to shorten it. After that, you're going to want to sand it down flat with the diamond files. Then try to install the crown back on by screwing it in. Finally, try to insert it back into the movement by just turning it clockwise until you hear it click and it starts being able to wind up again. You'll have to repeat this process a couple times until you get it perfect. You should try to cut in very small increments, because if you go overboard, you won't have enough length in order to fit into the case properly, so it takes a bit of time, but you get used to it. Then after you've done that, you're pretty much done. Just screw in the case back and you've got your watch. You'll need to screw in the strap or bracelet, of course, but So this is the final result for the watch. Off screen I was trying to clean the dial and ended up scratching it, so oops. Sorry the video quality here is so bad, I had to rush this part, but overall I think it turned out very well, all things considered. I wish you good luck on whatever watch you choose to build, and thank you for watching.